It's the Young Bucks. What is the Young Bucks on Robett Live? The time now is 12:19 in Auckland, 4:19 in San Francisco. You're on Saturday. I'm still on Friday, which means it's almost 5 o'clock, almost time to have another apple juice. And if you're in Sydney, it's 10:20. Young Bucks. What is Young Bucks? Future leaders in New Zealand. Young Kiwis that are doing good things. Why is this important? Because they're the next ones who in 10 years' time, they'll be giving my children jobs. That's why it's important. So we need to give them some props, give them the profile, give them a space to be able to talk about what they're doing. And the great thing when you got the Young Bucks in the mix is they're very passionate about bits and pieces. And we're extremely lucky today to have Matt Goldsworthy on. He's the CEO of Youth Arts New Zealand, Aotearoa's only youth-led organisation generating equitable opportunities for rangatahi to explore creativity, both as a career and as a means of self-expression. How are you, my friend? Welcome to the show, Matt. Kia ora, my bro.
Kia ora, man. So good to be here. I'm doing great, thanks. How are you going?
Hey, okay. I'm really excited to have you on the show. I saw your name pop up. You made it through the filters of TT to be able to get to me, to get to the show. So I'm excited we can get on here. I'll start off by saying I kind of despise and hate you, Matt, because, man, I wish you were around when I was a kid. I wish you were there when I was like, some 14, 15, 16-year-old young buck that was passionate about creativity and all the rest of it. So I've obviously given a quick top line. In a quick little nutshell, what do you do and how do you do it?
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, we get that a lot. There's a lot of people that have grown up without this sort of organization, and I think that speaks a lot to why we are doing something that's super valuable. So yeah, a bit about Youth Arts New Zealand. As you mentioned, we're a youth-led organisation, and so moving forward, it's really exciting to be able to, beyond just myself and the rest of our awesome team, introduce young people and youth voice as being really central to our kaupapa, or that central part of our organisation. So that's super exciting. But some of the programs that we run are really focused on how do we nurture and encourage creativity within the next generation, focusing on things like equitable access to the creative arts, focusing on how do we give young people access to a creative career, how do they make that first jump or that first leap into that career. So yeah, we run a whole bunch of things. Te Kahui is our creative writing and corrections program for young inmates. We are launching a National Youth Arts Festival next year, a whole bunch of really exciting things on the horizon.
It's super cool. What ages do you engage with, and what's the sort of the pipeline age sort of demo where you try and help and open their eyes when it comes to this potential futures for creativity? Where's your sweet spot?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that we've asked ourselves since we founded the organisation a few years ago. And where we've settled is actually that to be young is not necessarily something that can be defined by age. And I know that sounds super weird and kind of ethereal, but the reason that we've settled on that is because there are so many factors that go into what being young means. So, for example, if someone hasn't had access to an awesome education as they've been growing up, they've had other responsibilities, and they've had to, go and work instead of going to school, or they've not had access to work and they've had to do it the other way around. There's so many things that go into that, and so especially given our work with incarcerated rangatahi, we've turned that concept of what being young means on its head and gone, actually, there's so many people out there that haven't had access to a whole bunch of these support networks and services. So, we've completely reframed our definition of what it means to be young. Generally, we go with under 30. That's just the kind of really good catch-all. But we have been very, very fortunate to land in a space where we are much more fluid with our definition of what being young actually means.
So I've got a good friend of mine, Ian Taylor. He's over 60, might even be in his 70s. He's young at heart, and he's probably more mentally switched on than most people my age anyway. So it's cool that you're not just defining it by that. But I was gonna ask you, Matt, if you just tune in now, Matt is the CEO of Youth Arts New Zealand, doing a bunch of cool stuff for creativity and youth. I was going to ask Matt, when you think about all of the young people that you've engaged with over the years, and you think about the biggest handbrake that's holding back Kiwi youth in New Zealand right now? What do you think it is specifically?
It's a great question. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into this, but I would say one of the biggest is the lack of equitable access to creative opportunities.
What do you mean by that?
And that can be deconstructed again. Yeah, I mean, so what I mean is when you go to school and you're taught about maths and physics and all of that awesome stuff, which is super necessary, where does the creative arts fit into that? I was really privileged with my education, and I went to a fairly good school. It was a good decile. I had a good education, but even then, I wasn't actually given the opportunity to engage with the creative arts as a career. And so, if we're not encouraging this sort of thing in schools, then how can we expect young people to build a career or even engage with creativity as something that's super accessible? So I would say definitely bridging that gap between young people and the creative sector. I think it's a bit of a mystery to a lot of young people.
Do you feel it's a headspace shift that they need more like empowerment internally, or do you think it's more opportunity that needs to be given to them? Like, is it more of a push-pull? Do you feel that more youth need to go on the offense themselves to go get what they want? Or do you think it's more responsibility of those around them, say the older crew, right? Like I'm like pretty young to a 50-year-old, but I'm probably super old and ancient to a 20-year-old. Where do you think the tension lies? Who needs to give or take the most to make New Zealand better, in your opinion?
I mean, I think it's both, but I think that if we encourage a society where, or create a society where access to these sorts of things it is actually just super easy and super simple, and regardless of your background or your circumstance, you can access these sorts of opportunities. You can go to a creative writing workshop without worrying about transport. You can be taught about a music career or something as part of your career counselling at school. If those things are available, then we're going to see a whole lot more young people actually engage with the creative arts.
It's good. When you think young bucks, right, they have the one thing that I don't have, which is time. And when you're talking to most young people today, do they realize how much time they actually have in the long scheme of things? Or do they see the world one step ahead and it's basically there's not that much left? Like, are they a youth today self-aware enough to realize they have so much time, and I would give up any amount of dollars to be 15 or 20 again?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because if you look at the way that like the gig economy and short form content on TikTok and all of that stuff is going, it's actually a direction which is much more encouraging of a short-term mindset and just kind of churning stuff out. And I think the way that we create content, media, and just kind of creative stuff, art, music, all of that, it actually has to be done on such a quick time frame now, because that's what people expect. And that's kind of a really horrible way to frame it. And there's definitely some benefits, but I think that there's definitely a lot of challenges with the way that I guess content is consumed. And creativity is difficult because you don't want to just frame it as content, because then it's just for other people. But if we're talking specifically about the career side of things, it is really important to consider that. And so I guess looping back to your question, it's definitely a tricky space for young people to be in because of their proximity to Instagram and TikTok and all of these platforms and kind of social tools that really do prioritize that short-term thinking. But the young people that I have engaged with and that we're really fortunate to have kind of connected with over the course of our journey with Yams, a lot of them have such a long-term vision for the future and are so relentless in just doing whatever it takes to pursue their passion. And I think that's something that's super cool. So future focused, I think, for a lot of young people, but the way that the world is kind of tuning us to be, I think, is a lot more of a short-term mindset.
I think one of the biggest drivers on that, you're totally right there, Matt, is the danger when a whole generation gets stuck in consumption mode versus creation mode. And when you get stuck in consumption, it's the ever non-stop algorithmic fueled intake of content, stream, next, live, whatever, and it becomes so addictive of this almost this Vegas slot mentality of just like go and what's next. I think the good thing, when I think about what you're doing with Youth Arts New Zealand at Yans, is helping try and turn more young people into creators, not consumers, because when they're creating, the ideas are going into the world, positivity is coming out, things are getting created and doing, instead of sit back reactionary with everything coming to it. If people wanting to support what you're doing, how you're doing it, where can they go to, what can they do?
Yeah, awesome. We're hiring at the moment. So one of the best ways that you can support us is if you or someone that you know is interested in what we're doing. We're hiring for 2 positions. So check out our website, youtharts.co.nz. All the information is on there. Otherwise, follow us on our socials. We're on a pretty cool journey and have some awesome projects in the pipeline. So it would be awesome to be able to share that journey with you.
My man. Hey, it's awesome to hear your voice, Matt. Really stoked to see that you're on the mission, continue to do more to help in the creative sector, especially within New Zealand, to help more Kiwis create instead of consume, which is super cool. Really appreciate you joining the show. That was Matt. Absolute good man, smart man, Youth Arts CEO, very, very smart cookie, doing some good stuff. Stoked to get Matt Goldsworthy in the mix.